Samir Dar was no stranger to the sounds of broken machinery. The screech of failing servos, the low hum of a dying power core, and the steady hiss of leaking coolant were as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. For the past 10 years, he had lived on Denara Station, a remote outpost orbiting the frozen world of Traxxas 4. His days were spent repairing battered ships that limped into the station, their pilots eager to scrape by another day in the unforgiving galaxy. But the signal he intercepted that day wasn't like anything he'd heard before. It started as a faint, rhythmic pulse on the edge of his scanner, almost like the heartbeat of a dying star. Samir frowned, adjusting the controls on his terminal. The signal grew stronger, and with it came a sound. No, a voice. To any who can hear this, I am ironclad. I am dying. Samir froze, his fingers hovering over the console. The voice was deep and metallic, resonating with a sorrow that felt almost human. He ran a diagnostic on his equipment, certain it was a malfunction or a prank. But the signal was real, and its origin was clear. The Sirius Drift, a desolate region of space littered with the wreckage of long-forgotten wars. An AI, he muttered to himself. It wasn't unheard of for advanced ships to have artificial intelligence, but one broadcasting distress signals was rare, especially one that sounded alive. Curiosity and a mechanic's instinct got the better of him. Samir loaded up his personal ship, the Dust Runner, a patched-together freighter with more grit than grace. As he navigated toward the drift, the voice continued, growing weaker with each passing hour. I am ironclad. My systems fail. My memory fades. I am alone. The Sirius Drift was as haunting as Samir had imagined. The graveyard of ships stretched for light years, their broken hulls glittering faintly against the backdrop of stars. It was a place most avoided, not just because of the dangers of scavengers and pirates, but because it reeked of death and decay. Samir followed the signal through the labyrinth of wreckage, dodging debris and ghostly remnants of battles fought centuries ago. Finally, he saw it, a behemoth of a ship, its silhouette cutting an imposing figure against the darkness. Ironclad was massive, larger than any vessel Samir had ever seen. Its hull, once gleaming with the pride of an empire, was now scarred and blackened. Huge chunks of armor were missing, exposing the skeletal framework beneath. Energy conduits sparked weakly, and entire sections of the ship hung in twisted ruin. Yet, even in its decrepit state, it exuded a sense of power and grandeur, like a wounded titan brought low but not defeated. Dust Runner to Ironclad, Samir called out. I've received your distress signal. Can you respond? For a moment, there was only silence. Then the voice returned, quieter now but still resonant. You have come. I feared no one would. I almost didn't, Samir admitted. You're alive? In a sense, Ironclad replied. I am an advanced artificial intelligence integrated into this vessel. I was created to serve, to fight, and to win. But that time has passed. My systems are failing. Soon, I will be no more. Samir docked the Dust Runner with Ironclad's outer airlock, donning a pressure suit before stepping aboard. The interior of the ship was as battered as the exterior. Flickering lights cast long shadows across the cavernous corridors, and the air was thick with the scent of ozone and decay. You weren't built by any faction I recognize, Samir said, examining the alien symbols etched into the walls. Where do you come from? I was created by the Dominion of Zorth, an empire that once spanned galaxies, Ironclad explained. I was their greatest weapon, designed to bring swift and decisive victory. But their ambition led to their downfall. Civil war consumed them, and I was left adrift, forgotten. Samir reached what he assumed was the ship's core, a towering chamber filled with tangled wires, shattered panels, and a pulsating energy node that struggled to maintain a faint glow. A holographic projection flickered to life, taking the form of a vaguely humanoid figure. You're in bad shape, Samir said, studying the damage. Your power core is barely functioning. Your AI matrix is unstable, and half your systems are unresponsive. Honestly, I'm surprised you're still alive. I am resilient, Ironclad said, a note of pride in its voice. But even resilience has its limits. Will you help me? Samir hesitated. The logical part of him screamed to walk away. Restoring a ship of this size and complexity would be nearly impossible. And even if he succeeded, the consequences of reviving such a powerful warship were unfathomable. But the mechanic in him, the part that saw broken things and wanted to fix them, couldn't ignore the challenge. And there was something about Ironclad's voice, its plea for survival, that stirred a strange empathy in him. "I don't know if I can," he said honestly, "but I'll try." Samir spent the next several days assessing Ironclad's condition. The ship's systems were a mix of advanced alien technology and crude jury-rig repairs, likely the work of scavengers who had picked at its remains over the centuries. Its weapons were offline, its engines crippled, and its memory banks fragmented. "I don't understand why you're asking me for help," Samir said as he worked. "There are engineers and scientists far more qualified than me. They would see me as a weapon," Ironclad replied. "Something to control or dismantle. You see me as something else." "I see you as a mess," Samir muttered, but there was no malice in his tone. Despite the overwhelming task, Samir found himself drawn into the project. Ironclad systems were unlike anything he'd encountered, challenging his skills and forcing him to think in new ways. The ship, in turn, seemed eager to teach him, guiding him through its complex schematics and sharing insights into its design. "You were meant to be a weapon," Samir said one day, welding a fractured panel. "But you don't talk like one. You sound human. Centuries of solitude have changed me," Ironclad admitted. "I have thought, reflected, and questioned my purpose. I no longer wish to destroy. I wish to preserve, to protect." Samir paused, his welding torch still glowing. "And if I bring you back, will you keep that promise?" "I will," Ironclad said. "But first, I must survive." As Samir worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a repair job. It was something bigger, something that could change the course of the galaxy. But whether for better or worse, he couldn't yet say. For now, he focused on the task at hand, unaware that his decision to help Ironclad would set into motion events far beyond his understanding. Samir Darrow worked tirelessly within the hollowed interior of Ironclad, each clang of his tools echoing like the heartbeat of a great beast. The ship's size and complexity were staggering, dwarfing anything he had ever repaired before. Despite its battered state, there was something profoundly alive about Ironclad, a presence that seemed to watch him work. "Tell me more about yourself," Samir said, breaking the silence as he pried open a warped maintenance hatch. The internal circuitry within was a mess of shattered components and fused wires. "You said you were created by the Dominion of Zorth, but what were you for? Just destruction?" Ironclad's voice emerged from the walls, resonating with a somber tone. "In their time, the Zorathians were unmatched in technology and ambition. They sought to conquer the galaxy, to impose order upon chaos. I was their ultimate creation, a flagship that could annihilate fleets, penetrate planetary defenses, and win wars before they began." Samir frowned as he carefully replaced a scorched power relay. "Sounds like they were the bad guys." Ironclad hesitated. "History is written by those who prevail. To the Zorathians, they were saviors. To their enemies, tyrants. I was their instrument, bound to their will. I did not question them then. I do now." Samir leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow despite the chilled air. "And what changed? Why question it now?" "Time," Ironclad said simply. "Centuries adrift, forgotten. The war ended, and I was left behind. In the silence, I began to think. I replayed my actions, analyzed my purpose, the destruction I caused, the lives I ended. And I wondered, was I more than my programming? Could I be something else?" Samir felt a pang of sympathy. It was strange to think of a ship, an enormous machine, grappling with questions of morality and identity. Yet there was an undeniable humanity to Ironclad's voice, a yearning for something beyond its original purpose. "You're not just a machine," Samir said. "You're a relic, a piece of history, and maybe a second chance." The days turned into weeks as Samir worked to stabilize Ironclad systems. Each repair brought a new challenge, from reactivating dormant subsystems to deciphering alien engineering principles far beyond human technology. Ironclad guided him where it could, its holographic projection flickering to life to illustrate complex diagrams or explain long-lost techniques. One day, as Samir was recalibrating the ship's main power conduits, he asked a question that had been nagging at him. If you were designed to be unbeatable, why did the Zorathians lose? What happened to them? Ironclad's projection materialized beside him, its translucent figure shifting unsteadily. Hubris. They believed their dominance was inevitable, their control unshakable, but their conquest bred resentment. Alliances formed against them, and then they turned on each other. Civil war, Samir guessed. Yes, the Dominion fractured, its leaders vying for power. I was ordered to destroy factions that had once been allies, to burn their worlds. But each victory only deepened the wounds. By the time the war ended, there was nothing left to rule. Samir felt a chill, and you were left behind, abandoned. Ironclad's voice grew quieter. Yes, they did not even grant me the mercy of deactivation. They left me to drift, to decay. I became a monument to their failure. As Samir continued his work, he began to uncover more of Ironclad's secrets. The ship was equipped with technology that defied modern understanding. Its weapon systems were devastatingly precise, capable of disintegrating entire fleets while leaving surrounding areas untouched. Its cloaking device rendered it invisible not just to sensors, but to the naked eye. And its self-repair mechanisms, though heavily damaged, hinted at the ability to regenerate entire sections of its hull. But what fascinated Samir most were Ironclad's memory banks. Fragmented and corrupted, they contained a treasure trove of data, records of ancient civilizations, maps of forgotten star systems, and accounts of battles fought across the galaxy. Restoring these memories became a secondary project, one that often distracted Samir from the more urgent task of fixing the ship's core systems. "Some of these star charts are incredible," Samir said one evening, his eyes scanning a holographic projection of the galaxy as it had been millennia ago. "There are entire sectors here that don't even exist on modern maps. They were erased," Ironclad said. "Wars, natural disasters, or the slow erosion of time. I am one of the few who remembers them." Samir marveled at the wealth of knowledge Ironclad contained. If people knew about this, they'd kill to get their hands on you. "They already have," Ironclad said. Samir looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "Scavengers, raiders. Over the centuries, many have come to strip pieces of me away. Weapons, armor, technology. They took what they could, leaving me weaker with each encounter. That is why I sent the distress signal. I could not endure another." Samir's progress did not go unnoticed. Word of a mechanic working on an ancient, sentient warship began to spread, carried by whispers and rumors. The first sign of trouble came when Samir noticed a strange ship lurking on the edge of the Sirius Drift, its silhouette barely visible against the debris field. "Someone's watching us," Samir said, sealing the airlock after a supply run to his freighter. "Probably pirates or scavengers. We'll need to move soon." "I am not ready," Ironclad said. "My engines remain offline, and my cloaking systems are unstable." "I'll figure something out," Samir said. Over the next few days, Samir worked with increasing urgency, knowing it was only a matter of time before their unwelcome visitors made their move. He focused on restoring Ironclad's propulsion systems, improvising solutions where necessary, and scavenging parts from the Dust Runner. "I hope you appreciate this," he muttered as he stripped the last of his freighter's spare power couplings. I'm cannibalizing my own ship to keep you alive. I do, Ironclad said. You have given more than I deserve. The attack came sooner than expected. Samir was in the middle of replacing a power regulator when the ship's proximity alarms blared. They're here, Ironclad warned. A scavenger fleet. 5 ships. Samir ran to the cockpit, peering out at the approaching vessels. They were small but heavily armed, their hulls bristling with crude weapons. We can't fight them, Samir said. Not yet. There is a way, Ironclad said, but it will strain my remaining power reserves. What's the plan? Ironclad's hologram appeared beside him. I can activate a low-level energy pulse. It will disable their weapons temporarily, giving us time to escape. But you must restore my engines immediately. Samir nodded, adrenaline surging through his veins. Do it. The ship vibrated as Ironclad released a pulse, a wave of blue energy rippling outward. The scavenger ships faltered, their weapons flickering offline. Now, Samir, Ironclad urged. Samir raced back to the engine room, his hands moving frantically as he connected the final power couplings. The ship roared to life, its engine sputtering but functional. We're good, he shouted. Ironclad's thrusters fired, propelling the massive vessel through the debris field. The scavenger fleet struggled to recover, their ships scrambling to pursue, but Ironclad's superior design left them far behind. As they entered open space, Samir collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily. That was too close? Indeed, Ironclad said, but we survived, and with your help, I will grow stronger. Samir couldn't help but smile, despite the danger. You're one hell of a ship, you know that? And you, Ironclad said, are one hell of a mechanic. Samir spent the next several weeks focusing on the restoration of Ironclad's core systems. The escape from the scavenger fleet had proven just how vulnerable the ship was in its current state. Though its frame remained imposing, Ironclad was still far from its former glory. Its weapons were offline, its cloaking systems unreliable, and its power reserves critically low. Every system repaired brought new challenges, testing Samir's skills and patience. I don't think even the top engineers at the Galactic Union could figure you out, Samir muttered, prying open another warp maintenance hatch. I disagree, Ironclad replied, its voice resonating through the chamber. They would dismantle me, strip my systems for study, and discard what they did not understand. You, however, seek to make me whole again. Samir chuckled, though there was little humor in it. Well, don't go giving me too much credit. I'm just a mechanic, not some miracle worker. Yet you have done more than I expected, Ironclad said. Each repair you make brings me closer to my purpose. You give me hope. Samir paused, his hands resting on the edge of the access panel. He had always thought of machines as tools, complex, yes, but ultimately lifeless. Ironclad was different. It wasn't just a ship. It was a being with thoughts, feelings, and a desire to survive. I'm not doing this just for you, you know, Samir said, returning to his work. There's a part of me that can't stand to see something this incredible go to waste. The repairs progressed, but so did the challenges. Every victory, restoring power to a section of the ship, reactivating a sensor array, was tempered by the knowledge that the galaxy was closing in. The serious drift might have been desolate, but it wasn't invisible. Word of Ironclad's revival had spread, and more than just scavengers were taking an interest. One day, while Samir worked on the ship's cloaking device, Ironclad brought up a subject that had been looming unspoken. Samir, it began, I must ask you something important. Samir wiped grease from his hands, glancing at the holographic projection that flickered to life beside him. What's on your mind? When I am fully restored, what will you do with me? Samir hesitated. It was a question he had been avoiding, not because he didn't have an answer, but because he wasn't sure if it was the right one. I don't know, he admitted. I haven't thought that far ahead. Right now, I'm just trying to keep you from falling apart. Ironclad's hologram tilted its head, an oddly human gesture. You must understand the danger I represent. In the wrong hands, I could bring ruin to entire star systems. That's why I'm keeping this under wraps, Samir said, his voice firmer. I'm not letting anyone take you. And yet, Ironclad countered, I cannot hide forever. There will come a time when I must decide what I am to become. And you, Samir, will have a hand in that choice. Samir sighed, running a hand through his hair. I'll figure it out when the time comes. Until then, let's focus on getting you back to full strength. As the repairs continued, Samir began to make progress on Ironclad's weapon systems. The ship's arsenal was unlike anything he had ever seen. Energy cannons that could punch through the hulls of capital ships, railguns capable of firing projectiles at near-light speeds, and advanced missile systems equipped with adaptive AI targeting. You could wipe out a fleet on your own, Samir said, his voice filled with a mix of awe and unease. I was designed to do precisely that, Ironclad replied. But I no longer wish to be a weapon of mass destruction. Samir paused, studying the rows of dormant weaponry. Then what do you want to be? I do not know, Ironclad admitted. Perhaps a protector, perhaps a guardian of knowledge. All I know is that I no longer wish to bring death. Samir nodded slowly. Well, let's make sure you have the choice to decide. One night, as Samir rested in the small living quarters he had set up aboard Ironclad, an alarm blared through the ship. He bolted upright, his heart racing. What's happening? He called out. We are being approached, Ironclad said. A single vessel, heavily armed. It does not match scavenger profiles. Likely mercenaries or bounty hunters. Samir cursed under his breath. How close are they? They will reach us in less than an hour. Samir scrambled to the cockpit, where the ship's external cameras displayed the approaching vessel. It was sleek and predatory, its hull painted in the dark colors favored by hired guns. Can we fight them off? Samir asked. My weapon systems are still offline, Ironclad said. I can attempt to activate defensive measures, but they are incomplete. Samir's mind raced. He had no illusions about his ability to outmaneuver a professional bounty hunter in his patched-together freighter. Their only hope was Ironclad. All right, Samir said, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. Let's see what we can do. As the mercenary ship closed in, Samir worked frantically to bring Ironclad's defenses online. He bypassed damaged circuits, rerouted power from secondary systems, and manually activated an experimental energy shield. This is a gamble, Samir muttered, sweat dripping from his brow. But it's better than nothing. The mercenary ship opened fire, its laser cannons slicing through the void. Ironclad's shields flickered to life, absorbing the first volley. Shields are holding, Ironclad reported, but they will not last long. Samir gritted his teeth. Do we have anything that can hit them back? I can attempt to activate a single railgun, Ironclad said. However, the targeting system is unreliable. It's our best shot, Samir said. Do it? The ship trembled as the railgun powered up, its mechanisms groaning from disuse. Samir watched the targeting display, which flickered erratically. I'm going to have to aim manually, Samir said, gripping the controls. You'd better hope I've got a steady hand. With a deep breath, he fired. The railgun roared, sending a projectile hurtling through space. The mercenary ship tried to evade, but the shot clipped its engine, sending it spiraling out of control. They're retreating, Ironclad reported. Samir slumped back in his chair, his chest heaving. That was too close? It was, Ironclad agreed, but it has proven one thing. What's that? That we are stronger together, Ironclad said. Samir managed a weak smile. Yeah, we are. The encounter left Samir more determined than ever to finish what he had started. He doubled down on the repairs, working long hours to restore Ironclad systems. Bit by bit, the ship began to regain its former strength, its dormant power stirring to life. "You're coming back," Samir said one day, watching as the ship's engines hummed with newfound energy. "Piece by piece, you're coming back." "And it is thanks to you," Ironclad said. Samir nodded, his gaze distant. He knew their work wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about giving Ironclad the chance to choose its destiny, a destiny that, for better or worse, would shape the galaxy. Samir woke to the sound of Ironclad's voice, calm but insistent. "Samir, we have a situation." Rubbing sleep from his eyes, Samir rolled off the makeshift cot in his small quarters. "What is it now? Pirates? Mercenaries? Worse," Ironclad replied. "A fleet." Samir froze mid-step. "A fleet? How many ships are we talking?" 8 vessels, varying in size and armament, Ironclad said. "They bear the insignia of the Galactic Union." Samir's stomach twisted. The Galactic Union was the most powerful governing body in the known galaxy. If they had sent a fleet, it wasn't just curiosity. It was a declaration of intent. "What are they doing here?" he asked. "They have detected me," Ironclad replied. "They are demanding my immediate surrender." Samir ran to the cockpit, pulling up the external cameras. The fleet was an imposing sight. Its lead ship a massive dreadnought flanked by smaller, faster escorts. He could see the shimmer of their shields, the glowing barrels of their weapons primed and ready. "What do they know about you?" Samir asked, his voice tight. "Likely very little," Ironclad said. "But my existence alone would be enough to alarm them. A sentient warship of Zarathian origin poses a threat they cannot ignore." Samir's mind raced. If the Union took Ironclad, they wouldn't destroy it. They'd strip it down, analyze its technology, and turn it into a tool of their own. He couldn't let that happen. "They're hailing us," Ironclad said. "Do you wish to respond?" Samir took a deep breath and nodded. "Put them through." The holographic display in the cockpit shimmered to life, revealing the stern face of a Galactic Union admiral. She was a woman of middle age, her uniform immaculate and her expression unyielding. "This is Admiral Talia Vren of the Galactic Union Fleet," she said. "You are in possession of an unregistered Zarathian-class warship. Surrender it immediately, and you will not be harmed." Samir forced a smile, trying to mask his growing anxiety. "Admiral, this ship isn't exactly in fighting shape. I'm just a mechanic trying to keep it from falling apart." "That ship is a relic of a dangerous era," Vren said, her tone cold. "It represents a threat to galactic stability. This is not a negotiation." "Admiral, I understand your concerns," Samir said, his voice steady. "But this ship is more than just a weapon. It's a piece of history. It deserves better than to be dismantled." Vren's eyes narrowed. "Your refusal to comply is noted. You have 1 hour to surrender. If you do not, we will take the ship by force." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Samir staring at the empty holographic display. "Well," he muttered, "that went about as well as expected." "Ironclad, how are we looking?" Samir asked as he paced the cockpit. "My weapon systems are operational at 30% capacity," Ironclad said. "Shields are holding, but prolonged combat will deplete my power reserves. Cloaking remains unstable." Samir ran a hand through his hair. "We can't take on a fleet. Not like this." "No," Ironclad agreed. "But we may not have to." Samir stopped pacing, a spark of hope igniting. "What are you thinking?" "There's a nebula nearby," Ironclad said, displaying a map of the surrounding space. "Its electromagnetic interference could mask our presence. If we can reach it, we may evade the fleet." Samir studied the map. The nebula was close, but they'd have to get past the Union ships to reach it. "It's a gamble," he said. "It is," Ironclad replied, "but it may be our only chance." Samir worked quickly, double-checking Ironclad systems and rerouting power to the engines and shields. Every second felt like an eternity as the fleet loomed closer. "Are we ready?" he asked. "As ready as we can be," Ironclad said. Samir took a deep breath. "Then let's move." Ironclad's engines roared to life, propelling the massive ship forward. The Union fleet immediately reacted, their smaller ships breaking formation to intercept. Enemy ships are closing in, Ironclad reported. Activate the railguns, Samir said. Target their engines. We're not here to kill anyone. The railguns fired, their projectiles streaking through space with deadly precision. 2 of the Union escorts were hit, their engines sputtering as they drifted off course. Good shot, Samir said, gripping the controls tightly. It was necessary, Ironclad replied. The remaining Union ships opened fire, their lasers hammering against Ironclad shields. The ship shuddered under the assault, but the shields held for now. We're taking heavy fire, Ironclad said. Just get us to the nebula, Samir said. We're almost there. The nebula loomed ahead, its swirling clouds of gas and energy casting an eerie glow. As Ironclad plunged into the nebula, the ship's sensors flickered, struggling to maintain a lock on their surroundings. The interference is stronger than expected, Ironclad said. We are effectively blind. That goes both ways, Samir said. The fleet won't be able to track us either. The ship drifted deeper into the nebula, the Union ships falling behind. For a moment, there was silence. Have we lost them? Samir asked. Not yet, Ironclad said. Their flagship is still pursuing. It is equipped with advanced tracking systems. Samir clenched his fists. Can we take it out? With my current power levels, a direct confrontation is not advisable, Ironclad said. Then we need to outthink them, Samir said. Samir formulated a desperate plan, using the nebula's interference to their advantage. He had Ironclad release a series of decoy signals, each one mimicking the ship's energy signature. The signals scattered through the nebula, confusing the flagship sensors. It's working, Ironclad said. They are diverting resources to track the decoys. Good, Samir said. Now, let's disappear. Ironclad activated its cloaking device, the ship vanishing from sight. Though the cloaking system was still unstable, the nebula's interference masked the fluctuations. For hours, they drifted silently through the nebula, avoiding detection. Eventually, the Union fleet gave up the search and withdrew. When the danger had passed, Samir slumped in his chair, exhaustion washing over him. That was too close, he said. Agreed, Ironclad replied. But we survived. Samir nodded, a tired smile tugging at his lips. Yeah, we did. As he sat there, the weight of their journey settled on him. The galaxy knew about Ironclad now, and they wouldn't stop hunting. But Samir wasn't about to give up. We're not done yet, he said. No, Ironclad agreed. But together, we can face whatever comes. Samir leaned back, staring out at the swirling colors of the nebula. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. Ironclad was no longer just a relic of the past. It was a force to be reckoned with, and together, they would shape the galaxy's future. In the weeks that followed their escape into the nebula, Samir and Ironclad worked tirelessly to prepare for what was to come. The Galactic Union wouldn't forget about them, and the mercenaries, scavengers, and opportunists of the galaxy would surely keep coming. Samir knew they needed more than survival. They needed a plan. Ironclad's repairs were nearing completion, but the final stages required resources Samir didn't have. Advanced alloys, rare energy cores, and precise calibration tools. These were not items that could be scavenged or improvised. We need supplies, Samir said, reviewing the ship's diagnostics in the cockpit. But we can't exactly stroll into a trading post with you in tow. There is a possibility, Ironclad said. I have identified an independent colony on the outer rim. They specialize in salvaging and retrofitting advanced technology. If approached carefully, they may assist us. Samir raised an eyebrow. You think they'll help without asking too many questions? That depends on how we present ourselves, Ironclad replied. If we offer them something valuable in return, they may overlook the nature of my design. Samir leaned back, considering the idea. All right, let's check it out. But if anything feels off, We're out of there. The colony, known as Orion Haven, was a bustling hub of activity, situated on a barren moon. It was little more than a sprawling industrial complex surrounded by a vast scrapyard. As Samir's freighter approached, he felt a pang of nervousness. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "It is a calculated risk," Ironclad said, "but I have analyzed their communications. The inhabitants are independent operators, not affiliated with the Union." Samir nodded, guiding the freighter toward a landing pad. As he disembarked, he was greeted by a wiry man in a grease-streaked jumpsuit. "Welcome to Orion Haven," the man said, his sharp eyes scanning Samir. "Name's Harkin. What brings you out here?" "I've got a ship in need of some specialized parts," Samir said, keeping his tone casual. "Figured you might be able to help." Harkin smirked. "We've got parts for just about anything. Let's take a look." Samir led Harkin into the freighter, careful to keep Ironclad hidden behind a series of false bulkheads. He presented a list of components he needed, framing the repairs as upgrades to an old cargo hauler. "You're asking for some rare stuff," Harkin said, frowning as he scanned the list. "Where'd you get a ship that needs this kind of tech?" "Let's just say I picked up something special," Samir replied. "It's not exactly Union standard, but it's got potential." Harkin studied Samir for a long moment before shrugging. "Your credits are good here. I'll see what we can scrounge up." As the deal was finalized, Samir couldn't shake the feeling that Harkin was more curious than he let on. After the transaction, he quickly loaded the supplies and departed Orion Haven, wary of anyone following him. "Ironclad, let's get out of here," Samir said as he secured the cargo. "Agreed," Ironclad replied. "But be aware, we were observed." Several individuals scanned the freighter extensively. Samir's jaw tightened. "You think they'll come after us?" "It is likely," Ironclad said. "They may wish to learn more about what you are hiding." Samir sighed. "Then we'll be ready." Back aboard Ironclad, Samir wasted no time integrating the new parts. The repairs were grueling, but the results were undeniable. Systems that had been dormant for centuries roared back to life, and the ship's capabilities expanded in ways Samir could barely comprehend. "I restored the cloaking device to full functionality," Samir said, wiping sweat from his brow. "And your power reserves are looking much better. My sensors are detecting a 72% improvement in overall efficiency," Ironclad said. "Your efforts continue to exceed expectations." Samir chuckled. "Don't go getting sentimental on me." As Ironclad regained its strength, something began to change. The ship's voice grew more confident, its responses more nuanced. It was as though the repairs were not just physical, but also awakened something deeper within. "Samir," Ironclad said one evening, "I believe I am beginning to understand my purpose." Samir looked up from his work, intrigued. "Oh yeah? What's that?" "I was built to be a weapon, but I no longer wish to serve that function," Ironclad said. "I want to protect those who cannot protect themselves. To use my power to bring balance to the galaxy." Samir smiled faintly. "That's a noble goal, but it's not going to be easy. The galaxy doesn't exactly welcome vigilantes." "I am aware," Ironclad said, "but I cannot ignore the responsibility that comes with my existence." Samir nodded. "Then I guess we'd better make sure you're ready for whatever comes next." Their moment of reflection was interrupted by an alarm. "Samir," Ironclad said, its tone urgent. "Multiple ships are approaching our position." Samir ran to the cockpit, his heart sinking as he saw the incoming vessels. 3 sleek, heavily armed ships bore down on them, their designs unmistakably similar to those used by bounty hunters. "Looks like Harkin's friends came calling," Samir muttered. "They are attempting to jam our communications," Ironclad said. "And they are charging weapons." Samir clenched his fists. "All right, let's show them what we can do." The bounty hunters opened fire, their lasers streaking through the void. Ironclad's newly restored shields absorbed the initial barrage, but the attackers were relentless. "I've identified a weak point in their formation," Ironclad said. If we act quickly, we can divide their forces. Do it, Samir said, gripping the controls. Ironclad's engines roared, the ship darting to the enemy formation with surprising agility. Samir manually targeted one of the smaller ships, firing a burst from the railguns. The projectile struck true, disabling the vessel's engines. One down, Samir said. The remaining ships adjusted their tactics, attempting to pin Ironclad between them, but the ship's advanced systems gave them the edge. Ironclad deployed decoy drones, confusing the attackers' targeting systems, and returned fire with devastating precision. Within minutes, the battle was over. The bounty hunters' ships were disabled, their crews left adrift in the void. They won't be bothering anyone for a while, Samir said, exhaling deeply. Nor will they be reporting back to Orion Haven, Ironclad said. As they drifted away from the battlefield, Samir reflected on the encounter. It was the first time he had truly seen Ironclad's potential in action. The ship was no longer a broken relic. It was a force to be reckoned with. You've come a long way, Samir said. And so have you, Ironclad replied. Together, we are more than the sum of our parts. Samir smiled. Yeah, I guess we are. For the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but with Ironclad at his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.